Så nå etter å ha hørt om kunstig intelligens, hjernen og nervene, så skal vi gå over på en annen megatrend som Nysnø tror på. Og det jo at energisystemet vårt blir mer og mer distribuert og rent. Og neste taler kommer fra et kjempespennende solenergiselskap. Og nå skal dere forstå mer av hva de egentlig driver på med. Otovo har gjort suksess, først i Norge, så Sverige, og nå tar de Frankrike med storm. Og de ruller nå ut sin unike plattform, sånn at det blir enklere og enklere og billigere å få installert mer solenergi på private tak. Så nå skal gründeren av Otovo, Andreas Thorsheim, får lov til å fortelle oss mer. Vær så god. Kjempefint hvis du står der.
Thank you for that introduction, CD. I'll just jump right into it. So let me start with the energy system we have now. It's an energy system based on fossil fuels, and it's a choice we've made because fossil fuels have some great advantages. They're readily available, they're relatively cheap, they're compatible with the way we use energy, and obviously that's good attributes. Only problem is that they're creating a lot of problems that we don't want. They're actually killing us and killing off our ecosystems. So we're moving into different types of energy, going cleaner and cheaper, with energy forms that keep decreasing in price every single year, and that permit us to replace the way we generate energy with forms of energy that emit no pollution. Now this is a big change, and I think looking at Václav Smil's presentation, it's a transition that will demand a lot from us. We've done energy transitions before, but the global economy that we have now has never done an energy transition. And I think the pace and the magnitude of what we're able to do allows us to be positive about this change. Now, the change from fossil to renewable energy, that's only half the story. Because what's happening at the same time is that we're moving also from a base energy system based on centralized power production to distributed energy production. And this changes everything. Now this has happened before. Last time it happened was when we went from gathering natural biofuels in the forests around where we lived to a more centralized power system. And now we're moving power back out into the nodes. And that's what I'm going to talk about in my talk here. So what is happening? I think you can look at this as a logistics problem, right? And logistics problems, they're about how to get somewhere with what you have. Let me take an example. Do we need better batteries in electric cars, right? I think most people will say, yes, we do, right? That depends, really, because it depends on how fast you can charge your electric car. If you can charge it fast enough, you don't need that big a battery. Or if you can charge it everywhere, then you don't need that big a battery. Or if you can charge it while you drive, you won't need that big a battery, right? So the question, or the answer you get depends on the question you're asking. And this is how it works also in all kinds of complex systems. The answers you get depend on the resources you have available and which questions you ask about them. I come from another industry before going into energy 3.5 years ago, and I think sometimes it's good to see how trends have changed the ecosystems and changed the players in other industries to try and get a feeling of what will happen in the energy sector in the years that we have ahead. I think a good parallel is what's been happening in computing, because there's been a huge change driven by really three enormous technology shifts happening on top of each other. The first one is the improvement of computational power. It's what we know as Moore's law, and it allows us to do a lot more with a lot less at a lot lower price. In addition to that, there's the added trend of cheaper storage, allowing us to store information cheaper. And then you add a third component, which is cheaper communication, which allows us to transfer the data between the nodes and the center of the network. And those three trends enhance each other. And that's what really enables us to have supercomputers in our phone that are constantly on the internet, communicating with every other computer in the world constantly. And I think the interesting thing about this is maybe not the numbers, the pure numbers of how smart the phone in your pocket is compared to what we considered a good computer 20 or 30 or 40 years back. It's not the amount of data it transmits up into the internet or downloads from it. It's not the amount of images that are stored on YouTube at any given time. It's what you can do with it. And I think, I get in really good mood if I look at how computer games have evolved from when I started playing them in the 80s and 90s to what you can do now. Look at the troll here on this picture. This part of a game where 2 million people are playing at the same time. It feels like you can actually see it's a troll compared to what it was 25 years ago, when it's really hard to decipher the graphics, right? And these things, they're happening also in energy at the same time. Almost exact parallel changes. Improved cost of generating power, improved cost of storing power, and improved cost of sensing and communicating between devices in the power grid. And each of those trends is super strong on its own, but put together, it kind of creates a power of three effect. Solar and power and wind power are decreasing by 10% plus every year. Storage, same trend. And sensors, as we've seen in the two previous talks, enable us to utilize investments we've already made through water boilers or heating in buildings and use them as batteries, use their consumption patterns to interplay and reduce the problems of intermittency in solar and wind, for instance, right? And I think this is a reason to be super positive about the energy change that is about to happen, because I think we're getting so many new levers to pull in order to make this energy change happen. Now, what happens when you change from a system that is where power gets generated at the center and transported out to the nodes to an energy system where a lot more happens out in the nodes? We're able to produce power where it is consumed. We're able to store power where it will be consumed, or where you're able to control your consumption pattern or your storage pattern in order to match your production abilities. Well, it moves power, and not in the physical sense, but in more of the sense of enablement out to the consumer. I think we'll generate a lot of consumer surplus. It's going to be harder for the utility, for the grid operator, for the central powers to control value creation and control decision making. And I think this will create a situation where we'll have a different set of companies coming up in this age. Companies where decision making isn't happening in the corporate sense, it's happening at the consumer level, where mom and pop decide to buy solar panels on their roof. They decide to get sensor on their water boiler. That will be decisions that are maybe based more on how their neighbor, what their neighbor says about things, rather than the controller or the project managers in the company. It'll be companies that are probably more about brand and how they communicate to consumers rather than controlling assets. It'll be companies that will have different value sets from what you've had now. Obviously, when you move power to the nodes, you will also move the ability to create value. And I think this is something that's worth stopping up on, because I think if you look at the energy sector, it's been traditionally a lot about the manufacturing of power. Now that new technologies are entering the energy sector, it opens up for different types of players, and the value creation will not mainly be in manufacturing, but it will be in the services or the go-to-market part of the energy sector. If you look at how the value creation on the phone you have in your pocket happens today, who has high margins? It's the companies that create the camera, the unique camera that exists in your iPhone. Or it is Apple that owns the Apple Store, or has the App Store that operates on your phone. Both of those companies can have 20% margins. The ones that are manufacturing the phone, they have 1 or 2% margins, Foxconn, right? In the industry where I was before, in the media industry, you can have the creators of content, people who create unique TV series or have the top shows on TV. They can have good revenues. Those who manufacture newspapers or put together a TV channel, they have increasingly hard time making a profit. And then you have the distributors at the end, the app stores or the service providers at the end of the value chain, having good margins again. I think we'll see this type of value creation shape in the value chain also going into energy. The people inventing new sources of energy, inventing the new hardware, inventing the components that are unique will have high profits. The distributors and the manufacturers will increasingly have a hard time making a profit, and then the companies creating the services or bringing those services to market will be the ones making a killing in the energy sector. Okay, that was my talk. Thank you.